Welcome to NFL World, where the NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. And before we preview what happens in the divisional round, let's recap the game between the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was a game for 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters of play, and then Houston just started to pour it on. It was 7-6, and the only reason it was 7-6 was because of the turnovers. Houston turned the ball over 3 times, and the Steelers would do what the Steelers do and not being able to score on offense. We will get into that in a little bit. 6 points is what they scored off the 3 turnovers. Houston gets a touchdown from Christian Kirk. They kick a field goal, and then it just starts becoming a waylay. They have 2 defensive touchdowns by Sheldon Rankins, having a recovery that he returns. He becomes like a running back. It was insane. There was a pick six that Rodgers threw, which could be Rodgers' last pass in the NFL. It just became an on-again showing. The Texans, we saw this happening. We saw this happening of the Texans were going to put up points, though it didn't come from their offense, which was a little bit surprising. But their defense played lights out. There was a play, and we'll get into it a little bit later, where the Steelers, all the time the Steelers looked like they can't move the ball. We'll get into that what had happened and how they got their first points of that game, the Steelers did. But it was an awesome game. Now the Houston Texans go on the road into New England. They face off against the New England Patriots on Sunday, where they got in the 4:00 window. That's going to be interesting to watch in a game that they're not favored in, but it almost feels like they are. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to talk about this Mike Tomlin news. News broke yesterday that Mike Tomlin, I'm going to fix this, Mike Tomlin was stepping down, resigning as the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've seen people have a little bit of confusion about this. I want to clear the air. He stepped down. He resigned. He was not fired. So if Tomlin wanted to coach this year, which according to the Rooney family, that does not seem to be in Tomlin's mind at this point, that it seems like he wants to take a year off, which makes sense. You had the head coaching job for 19 years. You know, you're thinking about this guy got the job in 2007. It's 2026. To have the same job for almost 20 years and the varying levels of success, like he wants a break, and everyone could understand that. But due to the fact that he retired or resigned or whatever you want to call it, he would have to, if he wanted to coach again, the team that wanted to interview him would have to call the Steelers to request permission. Just like if there was a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator who was in contract, that team would have to call the Steelers up and say, hey, could we interview him? And the team can say yes or no. If the team says yes, then you can go talk to him. And if the agreement is yes, we want him to be our head coach, then they have to go back to the team. This is how it's different. They have to go back to the team and say, we want to make Mike Tomlin our head coach. And in doing that, we have to trade for him. Now, the most recent trade of that is Sean Payton, who went for a second-round pick. Mike Tomlin's resume is he's been to 2 Super Bowls, winning one of them, 19 years without a losing season. There's a lot of upside to that. This is the guy who's the king of the message. He's king of this. He has so many phrases and sayings and metaphors, able to get his players into believing that. I encourage you, go watch some NFL films, and they are amazing to watch. His, I'll say a couple of things that he said. The standard is the standard's the most notorious one. The standard is the standard, which no one knows exactly what that means. I guess it means whatever you want it to mean. But then there's a difference between drinking wine and squashing grapes. And it's like, where does he come up with that? Nameless gray faces. Man, it didn't matter who we faced. We were going to dominate the game. It was just those things. And it goes on and on and on. And a lot of them, they were, you're like, that white, that's weird to say, but also the players got something out of that. So it worked. Now, again, what would a trade compensation look like? I'm not exactly sure because you have a guy who has the experience. You think he's had this job for 19 years. You would think he's in his 60s. He's not. He's in his mid 50s. I think he's 52. He's 52, 53. He's not that old. So for a guy that has had as long of a career as a head coach as he's had, to only be in his mid 50s is kind of extraordinary. I'm curious to see what they do and what team is willing, because there will be a lot of suitors. There will be, just like the John Harbaugh stuff. There's a lot of suitors for him. I would assume that if he chooses to not coach this year, which it looks like that's going to be the case, if he chooses to only coach in 2027, he'll have a lot of suitors. Everyone will have him on the board and be like, hey, can we get Mike Tomlin? Can we get Mike Tomlin? Why not? We want to change our culture. We want to have a difference of viewpoint. Let's bring in Mike Tomlin. I mean, that didn't seem. I was thinking about this to myself by saying, how on earth did I? There was no way. 72 hours ago, you would never have thought Mike Tomlin would have left. And he did. And I know people are like, well, what about the success? How is it varying levels? Well, they have not won a playoff game, the Steelers haven't, since 2016. And the Steelers have lived in this policy for years of, if you don't lose the locker room, we're not going to fire you. Chuck Noll they had for 20 plus years, Bill Cowher for 15 years, Mike Tomlin for 19 years. They haven't really done a coaching search. They've never have. They don't. The best job in America is being the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. You're going to have the length of time that you always want. As long as you don't lose the locker room, you will have a job for life. Because each coach, they've only hired 3 coaches in the last 50 years. It's amazing. It is amazing. You don't have that kind of job security. Think about this. You could retire and say, I had 40 years at this job. It's still not as secure as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coaching job. It is insane. And that Rooney's have always believed in this, at least since they hired Chuck Noll. That's the way they've always done it. Since Chuck Noll, for the last 50 years, they do not go and fire head coaches unless they lose the locker room. This was Mike Tomlin's call. Now, was he pushed into that call? Who knows? It's not for me to say. I don't think it's for any other media people to say. I think he said, I don't want to be here. I don't have that fire to be here, because it was getting to the point of, you don't know how hard it is if you're a Steelers fan, there's certain songs they play during the game. One of those songs is Renegade. They played Renegade in the fourth quarter. They play Renegade to start the game. They have a whole thing. It's their song. Steelers fans will booing renegade. That is impossible to think about. Every time Tomlin would end up on screen, they would boo him because this offense doesn't work. The plays I was telling you about, how the first points of the game for the Steelers, they scored first. They forced a turnover because there was 2 fumbles. They actually fumbled it. The Texans did 6 times. It was insane. The Steelers recover in plus territory. They're in field goal range. You're trying to score a touchdown because you know this Texans defense is really good. It's going to be hard to score points. You want to score touchdowns. They ran 7 plays, 7 in plus territory, and only gained 4 yards. That's the Steelers offense in a nutshell. For the last 5 to 7 years, it's been that way. And it came to a head. Mike Tomlin ties Marvin Lewis with 7 consecutive playoff losses. 7 consecutive. They can't win. And a lot of them, they get outmatched. I understand. They played Buffalo when they had Mason Rudolph. They were outmatched. We know that. They played Baltimore last year in the playoffs, and they got run over. They played Houston, and they got dominated this time around. They haven't been able to win playoff games. In fact, go back to when they won in 2016. Go back to that playoff game, and I want you to go and look. Just go look. If I remember correctly, that was, if I'm not mistaken, the game where they were playing Cincinnati, the 2015-2016 season, where they shouldn't have won that game. They won that game because of Vontaze Burfict almost taking the head off Antonio Brown. That's what happened. They shouldn't have won that game. They were losing. But because Vontaze Burfict went and almost decapitated Antonio Brown on the field, and they threw a flag for a defenseless receiver that basically put the Steelers in field goal range, and then there was another penalty that put it closer. That's how they won. So really, we can go longer than that. We can go more than 10 years. We can go further down the road. It's kind of, and I thought about this. I was listening to a Steelers fan who has a YouTube channel. He said Bill Cowher's career and Mike Tomlin's career are in inverse. And they are. They are. Because you look, Bill Cowher got the job in 1991. And they had went to a Super Bowl in 95. They lost. And then every year they would get close. They'd get into the AFC Championship game, they'd lose. They get into the AFC Divisional Round, they'd lose. Every year. To the point it was like, well, I don't think Bill Cowher has it to be this head coach. We might have to go do something else. And then they go in that magical run in 2006 where they go and win the Super Bowl. Then Cowher comes back for 2000. It was the 2005-2006 season where they won the Super Bowl in 2006-2007, and they don't go and repeat. And Cowher, he leaves, he goes joins CBS, but Mike Tomlin comes in, and Mike Tomlin goes and wins the Super Bowl in his second year, and then goes to another Super Bowl in which they lose to the Packers. But ever since that loss to the Packers, they have never gotten back. They have never really gotten back. They've never played well. And for the last couple years, their offense has no identity. Their defense, which they've run, some of those plays they've run since the 1970s. So there's no inspiration, there's no nuance, there's no nothing to this offense or to this defense. It is year after year after year, you look at that. It's just the way it is. So whoever they hire, honestly, the best two coaches I would hire for them would be if they want to go in a complete opposite direction. What about Mike McDaniel? What about a Brian Dable? Something in that department. And Kevin Stefanski would fit nice. But if you want to stay with defensive guy, what about Brian Flores? He's already been there. He knows the guys. It's kind of similar, but it's not. There's some difference. And then you just got to bring a great offensive mind. You can do that. Will the Steelers do that? Who knows? All right. Let's move on to the AFC Divisional Round. They start off Bills on the road against the Denver Broncos. +1 is, and when I saw the Broncos were getting +1, it surprised me. Because the Bills, they beat Jacksonville, and that was nice. That was cute. Denver's a lot better on defense. Not offense, but defense. I'm curious to see what that looks like. Josh Allen is not coming into this game healthy. Banged up hand, banged up knee, banged up ankle, banged up foot. I want to see how healthy he is. There's good news for the Bills. They activated the window for Curtis Samuel and Ed Oliver. They need Ed Oliver because if he doesn't play, they don't have a run defense. They got beat by Travis Etienne. You cannot allow that to happen. Broncos don't have the best running offense in the world. Their offense is a disaster. They make weird plays that you can't fully understand. But they have a great defense. And I'm concerned about this Bills offense. I saw this Bills offense play the Eagles defense and couldn't do anything for like 3.5 quarters. I wonder if that's going to happen again. And I'm going to bet on it that it's going to happen again. I know, there's injuries. Gabe Davis got hurt. That's a loss in the wide receiver room that has a lot of losses. You can't afford for those things to happen, especially at this point. And Denver, look, they're on this ride at this point. No pun intended. I have the Broncos winning, not because their offense is good, but because their defense is really good. I told you before that a great game would be Denver and Houston, not because of their offenses, but because of their defenses. I still think that's going to happen. Give me the Broncos to win. It's going to be a weird scoring game. I have the game being 17-14 Broncos. Moving on to the 49ers at the Seahawks on Saturday night. 7.5 or 7 points favorites the Seahawks are. This 49er team played really well against Philadelphia. They really did. I don't know what to think of this 49ers offense, though. They didn't play well in the course of the game. Two bad interceptions by Brock Purdy I don't know what he was trying to do. They were running the ball well. When they got the ball to Christian McCaffrey, no one could cover him. But no George Kittle, only Christian McCaffrey. We'll see about Ricky Pearsall. But I wouldn't bet on that. And even if you can, the offense doesn't really roll through Pearsall, rolls through Christian McCaffrey. But what Kittle does, he's a great blocker. He's a great receiver. It's hard to cover him. You lose that threat now. That damages an offense. You still have Christian McCaffrey. But the last time these two teams played, Seattle beat the tar out of them, even though the score didn't say that. When I look at Seattle, the only thing is you cannot allow Sam Darnold to return into a pumpkin. You can't let him turn into a pumpkin in this game. Your defense has to play great, which it has, but you gotta continue to play great. I have Seattle winning just because I don't think San Francisco has the gas to keep up. Give me Seattle in a weird game, 20-10. Moving on to Sunday's games, the Texans on the road against the Patriots. Patriots are 3.5-point favorites. If you watch the game on Sunday, and I was texting Lucas this question, I texted him over. I had to have texted him probably 10 times, and he answered. To his credit, I said, your offensive line got destroyed by Oweh, Mack, Tui Pelotu. They just destroyed them in different ways. Speed, power, finesse moves, whatever they were doing, they were winning. This Texans defense is really good. They're really good. Similar to the Broncos in many ways. But when I saw that Patriots team play, they only got one touchdown against the Chargers. They couldn't really do much. It was bad. It was a bad performance. Drake May got hit a lot. Turnovers, misplays, missed opportunities. And it wasn't like the Chargers did much of anything either on there when they had the ball. The game is going to be won in the trenches. This is how this game is going to be won because you don't have the advantage against the secondary. But the defensive lines and the offensive lines are where you can make your head. Patriots offensive line did not play good, but they have played pretty well as a collective unit through the year. The Texans, it seems like every year they have a really bad offensive line, a really bad one that never gets better. I'm curious to see, and I wonder, can they hold up against this interior defensive line with Milton Williams leading the way in the interior? I don't know. If I'm going to go in a defensive battle, give me the Texans. I just don't see how the Patriots offense is going to score. I know how the Texans score. I don't see how the Patriots are going to score. Give me the Texans to win in a very low scoring affair. 17-10. Moving on to our final game. Rams at Bears. Bears are 3.5-point dogs. They're getting plus 3.5. The Bears are. I think the Rams do give them issues, but I don't know if it's 3.5-point underdogs I'm giving the Bears. I would say the Bears are favorite because the Bears are kind of like the Broncos in terms of their offense shows up in the fourth quarter and their defense makes enough plays. It's not like the Broncos defense where they just suffocate. The Bears defense will give up a lot of yards. The Rams, they didn't play great against Carolina. They made the throws when they had to. They made the plays when they had to. But they didn't play great against Carolina. I think Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua will give issues. I think the run game will cause issues for the Bears. But I do think when the Bears get to take the field, they'll cause issues for this Rams defense. So I'm curious to see what happens. That's a very nice way of putting it. I think what is going to be the resolve is how good is this Bears offensive line against this Rams defensive line? How do they rank up pressure against Caleb Williams? Because that's what I think it's going to come down to is just pressure and coverage. If they can play well, maybe something will work. It's going to be an interesting game. It's going to be a high-scoring affair, probably the highest-scoring affair game we will have. And I just think there's too many weapons for the Bears to have to cover. The tight ends, the running backs, the receivers. I think it's just too much. Give me the Rams to win in a high scoring affair, actually. 35-24. But I do think the Bears will put up a fight. It won't be enough. Let me know in the comments who you have winning this week. Also, were you surprised that Mike Tomlin decided to step down? For NFL World, I'm Jacob Hewitt. Out.